Welcome to Burnout Solutions. My name is Mona Tippett. I am a registered nurse, a life coach, an emotional resiliency expert, and a mom. I love to help healthcare workers and caretakers and just busy, capable people understand their brain and nervous system so stress, overwhelm, and frustration do not run their life. Here on this podcast, we break down burnout, emotional overload, and survival patterns in simple human language. I love to give you practical ways to feel safer, calmer, and more present in your everyday life. You do not need fixing. What you need is support and a nervous system that knows that it's safe. Thanks for being here. Hello, and welcome back to Burnout Solutions. I am so glad that you are here with me on my summer series of work and play. Last week, we talked about the quality of our leisure and the difference between pleasure and enjoyment, and why some of us have what we call rest is actually leaving us more depleted and not restoring us. This week, I wanted to talk a little bit more about that, but in a deeper way. And I wanted to zoom in on something that a lot of us spend a lot of money and time, whether planning, thinking about it, revisiting it in our minds, if not physically. And we can get pretty emotionally charged over this, and that is vacations. I was inspired by this actual whole series on something that I read on Facebook. And I don't remember exactly what the post said, but it said something like, I'm stuck in a cycle. I go on vacation to get away from my work. And when I get back, I work really, really hard so I can pay for my next vacation. And it did make me laugh. And I have thought about it a lot, and really was what got me thinking about this whole series, along with reading and several things that I've been going through. But today I wanted to address that. So if you feel like you are stuck in that cycle, this episode is for you. And if you can relate to that in any amount, keep listening. I want you to think about your relationship with vacations. Did you know that you have a relationship with vacations? So think about it. Why do you take vacations? What are you hoping your vacation will do? How do you feel when your vacation is over? How do you feel when you're on vacation? How do you feel when you're planning vacation? I think a lot of vacation is actually the anticipation of what's going to happen. My family is going on a cruise this summer with all of my siblings, and I am so excited about it. And my parents are going. We are celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, and I am just so excited. And we keep talking about it and thinking about what we're going to do. And a lot of vacation for me, I have noticed, is the anticipation of what is going to happen. Now, this can create a letdown, because what actually happened was not as great as what happened on our vacation. But we're not going to talk about that. We are going to talk about what vacations can do. So I'm going to not go on a tangent. So for most of us, what vacations can do is they can be a pressure valve, right? It's the thing that we are working towards, the reward at the end of the relentless stretch. You know, we push ourselves hard. We're burning through, we're white knuckling it. We accumulate enough PTO, or we've saved enough money, and we're planning and we're talking about it. And then we finally go on this vacation. And a lot of times we hope that vacation, those 7 days, those 10 days, those 3 days, whatever, somewhere else will make the previous 6 months or the previous year or 3 years or, 315 days of overwork better. And we go on vacation, and then we come home to a life that erases the reset that the vacation offered, sometimes in a day, sometimes in 48 hours, sometimes it only lasts a week. I think a week is huge. How many times have you gone on vacation, and at the end of that week, you're like, oh man, I need to go back on vacation. This is just so crazy. And we start that cycle all over again. Today, I am calling this cycle the vacation treadmill. And I also want to give you something far more practical and immediately usable to break this cycle on the vacation treadmill towards the end. And I'm going to give you some ways. I think there's 7 ways. I might add more. But we're just going to say 7 ways to make your work more enjoyable so that your whole life doesn't ride on those 2 weeks of vacation in August or that summer break or the Christmas breaks. I was talking to someone the other day and we were talking about school being out. It is towards the end of May and we are getting out super early this year. It's May 21st, I think is our last day of school. And I think that is crazy early. And I would love school to go a little bit longer, but I also don't want school to start August. That just seems so short. And we were talking about, okay, let's just start school from Labor Day to Memorial Day and cut out, make Thanksgiving vacation shorter and winter break vacation shorter and take out those professional development days for the teachers. And as I've thought about it, I'm like, no, I think those teachers need those breaks. I think our kids need those breaks. I think breaking it up and putting in those mental health days of those breaks can really help us perform better and do better and relax more because we're not pushing ourselves so much. But I am going to talk about how we can make all of those times at school, at work, regardless of your schedule, better. Because I really do believe that you and everybody deserves a life that doesn't require an escape, right? So let's talk a little bit more about the vacation treadmill and go a little bit deeper on that. I see the cycle over and over with people, especially high achievers, especially healthcare workers. I see lots of teachers counting down to the breaks. I think that's because kids just start to get a little crazy when they know that a break is coming. And when we work at an intensity that isn't sustainable, and it's not sustainable, but we're just pushing through, it's like, oh, it's fine. I'll work extra because pretty soon I'll have a break. And I absolutely understand that the work is important. Your patients need you. Your team needs you. Maybe your team is short-staffed. You can never find a substitute if you're a teacher. Your projects really matter. And so you just keep going. And over time, you accumulate exhaustion the way that you accumulate debt. Think about this. A little tiny more each day, convinced that you're going to deal with it later, you're going to pay it off, it's going to be fine, and a little bit more won't hurt. And then finally, we reach a threshold and we can't do it anymore. Or you're like, okay, that's it. I'm going to book a vacation. So you plan your trip, you count down the days. And again, for me, I think that anticipation itself becomes some sort of relief and something that I'm looking forward to in my day-to-day, something that makes the depletion that maybe I'm feeling or you're feeling just feel a little bit more doable and temporary. And so what happens is when we finally go on vacation, this is what I have seen a lot of people talk about. The first 2 days are spent decompressing, or maybe you just sleep, right? You sleep all day, all night, doing nothing. You're just laying around and you're trying to decompress. Or maybe out of habit, your shoulders are still hunched up, around your earlobes. You're still in the habit of checking your phone. You're still in the habit of not sitting still. You can't relax, right? We kind of go to these extremes. And maybe even you're still checking your work emails, or you're taking calls, or maybe you're finishing your charts, whatever. And so maybe if you're not physically at work, maybe mentally you are, and you're still problem solving work situations or interactions with patients or things with students, things that you left unfinished. And it might take until day 3 or 4 for something in you to actually exhale. I am for sure somebody who I feel like vacation for me is pretty stressful. I remember a few summers ago, we were going to Canada on a mountain bike trip with all my kids. It was actually really fun, but I was a big giant grouch for, I don't know, I, the votes would probably differ from a week before, a few days before, and just planning and getting everything ready and fixing the bikes and getting extra tubes in case something happened and planning the meals and planning the places we were staying on the way there. And I just remember nobody wanted to go on vacation with me. I think if they could have voted, they would have all said, okay, let's just leave mom home. and and I actually do remember getting in the van. We had a 15 passenger van, which we have since purchased. But I remember getting in the van and just after just a few minutes, I just felt so much better, so much relief. I'm like, okay, we're finally on our way. We have everything packed. We've done all the hard work and now we can enjoy it. And it kind of was a switch. And I think everybody was a little bit surprised, including me, how much better I felt just finally being there. And I'm glad that it only took a few minutes. But for a lot of us, vacation is stressful. It's actually one of the top 10 stressors that they have shown that vacation can be really stressful. So maybe days 3, 4, and 5 are like the really only good days of your vacation because it took day 1 or 2 to decompress, to wind down, to relax. And then 3, 4, and 5 are really good, maybe even great because you remember now that you are less stressed, you remember what it feels like to be a real human being rather than a function, rather than a creature of habit that's just performing things over and over again. You can laugh more, you can sleep more, you can eat more slowly, you can actually enjoy the people that you're with, you're present with them, and your relationships are better, hopefully, than they have been in months. And then sometimes this happens. I know it's happened to me before. Day 6 arrives, and with it comes that impending doom that in 2 days, you are going to go back home to a life and work that is waiting for you, and buildup has happened while you are away, and there's going to be a backlog, and there's going to be emails, and there's going to be patients who need you, and projects that haven't moved at all while you're gone. And the last 2 days of your vacation are spent mentally back at work. The rest is starting to become undone before it was even finished. I do not like that. And then when you come home, you're right back at it. Your inbox maybe is exactly as terrible as you thought it was. And you go to work and you have a million patients that are waiting to see you. And this emergency happened and that emergency happened, that. And so they've added patients to your schedule. I know this happens to my husband quite often when he takes vacation, that at some points in our career, he's like, it's just not even worth it. And so within 48 hours of you being home, all evidence that you took a break, all evidence that you went on vacation, all of that anti-stress has been erased and the cycle begins again. So that is what I call the vacation treadmill. And the reason it keeps on running is not that you're taking bad vacations or not that you're doing it necessarily wrong, but it's because that vacation has become the only sanctioned form of restoration in your entire year. It's the only time that you are allowing yourself to have those breaks. And when you strip play and rest and enjoyment and real relaxation and regulation and recovery from your Tuesday evenings and your Saturday mornings and your lunch breaks and your in between your patients, then these 2 weeks of vacation or this 1 week of vacation or these few days of vacation has to carry an impossible load. Okay, I just want you to think about that. What are you asking your vacations to do? When we are in this situation, this vacation has to undo everything, right? And I am sorry to say, but 2 weeks, a week, a few days cannot undo everything that has been built up during that time. Arthur Brooks talks about this a little bit, and he talks about how the pursuit of goals and achievement places us on the hedonic treadmill. He says, especially for higher achievers, we're running and running and running, and we're never quite arriving. This is very similar on the vacation treadmill, but it's for leisure. And we're asking our vacation and this leisure to do the very same thing as this work treadmill. And so we work hard for the vacation. We experience diminishing returns from the vacation, and then we work hard for the next one. Now, of course, I'm going to throw a nervous system. And from a nervous system perspective, your autonomic nervous system cannot fully shift into ventral vagal safety, into our optimal zone of performance on command. It cannot go from sustained fight or flight activation straight into deep rest, straight into deep relaxation, straight into rejuvenation just because you've landed on a tropical island or, you're 2,000 miles away. Your nervous system needs transition. And so even if you physically are in a different place, you mentally, psychologically are not. And what does it need? Shocker. If you've listened to any of these episodes, I talk about this a lot. It needs consistent regulation over time. Your nervous system needs to experience safety distributed across our day in micro moments of connection, distributed across the days and the weeks that we are living life, and not injected into one concentrated dose a few times a year. Okay? So what's the solution? The solution is to not stop taking vacations, because vacations are wonderful. I totally am a supporter of vacations. I do not take enough of them. I did not grow up taking vacations. My dad was a dairy farmer. I've shared that before. And he could not find people to take care of the cows and milk them twice a day, right? That was hard. And so my blueprint actually doesn't involve vacations. My husband, his dad was a dentist in the medical profession, and he did not take vacations. And so neither of us actually have, I don't know what to say. We do not hold vacations to a high regard. We do not use vacations a lot. We probably should more. But as we have talked about it more and more, we just think, well, we don't need to escape our life. We do a lot of really fun, rejuvenating things weekly in nature. We mountain bike, we snow ski, we water ski. We do a lot of things, and we enjoy our life, and we do not need to escape from it. So if you feel like you need to escape from your life, that's, again, what this episode is all about and this series. And I want you to take the impossible pressure off of vacation. And I want to give you some real ways to enjoy your work more. And these ways I've thought about. My husband's good at a lot of them. I've learned about these in my Forward Facing Institute training. I help people implement these. And I really do believe that they work. Okay, so let's talk about the practical ways to make your work more enjoyable, where you can turn your work into not something that you endure, but something that you actually are choosing. And I kind of want to start out with that. You chose your job. I do not know anyone in the United States who has been forced to do their job. Most people go to years of training, go to schooling, go to interviews, submit an application. They actually are competing with other people for this job. And so you chose that job. And that is the first thing to remember, is that you choose your job. Every single day you choose your job. If you're a parent, yes, you even choose that. If you wanted to, you could abandon your family and leave and start a new life somewhere else. When you think about doing that, do you really want to do that? I mean, some people do, and they do that. I don't recommend that, but when we can make that shift in our mind that we are choosing our job every single day. And that's what I wanted to just talk about first, is that you choose your job, and the perspective shift that you can take just by believing that, just by telling yourself that, just by saying, this is what I am choosing to spend my time doing. I think, and I have seen that it helps you have a huge shift in your perspective. Okay, so that's number one. Okay, number two is find your flow. There's been lots of research on flow. And what is flow? Well, flow is the state of complete absorption where time disappears because you are entirely present and engaged in what you're doing. And maybe you found something surprising there. Maybe you didn't realize that that much time had gone past. Flow happens more often during work than leisure. Isn't that interesting? Flow happens when you are using your creativity, your problem solving. You are deeply focused on that, and that happens more in work than leisure. It can happen while you're watching a movie. It can happen while you're reading a book, but more often than not, it's when we are doing an activity, when we're actually taking action and doing something. I want you to think about when you've experienced flow in your work, and hopefully you had. A lot of times it's that complex case that had your full attention. Maybe a shift where your team was working like clockwork and everyone was stepping up and everyone was in a good mood and everybody was working together. And it almost felt like it was a choreographed skit, right? Everyone did their part perfectly or close to perfect. Maybe it was a patient encounter or an encounter with a student or a child or a neighbor where something really real and human passed in between you two and you connected and, time kind of went out the window. That is what flow is. And that is where your brain feels most engaged. And that is when your brain feels alive. So I want you to think about, when did I experience flow? What conditions produced it? Was it a particular type of task, a certain level of complexity or challenge? If your work is too boring, do you need a job that's challenging you more? Sometimes a specific time of day. It can be different for other people. So figure that out and then protect those conditions and try and replicate them as much as you can, because flow is not just enjoyable, but being in flow is deeply restorative. And being inside flow is actually a form of play inside your work. At least mentally it is. Okay. Number three, reconnect with your original why. And I think about this so much. Before there was electronic medical records, before your documentation was crazy and a burden and they got rid of secretaries and all the people that helped with orders. And I see that the nurses are doing that. And there's so much, they've eliminated so many people in the middleman of healthcare and probably in other professions too. But this is your work before the productivity metrics and the satisfaction scores and the Google reviews and the staffing shortages and all the politics and the drama, blah, 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 was going on. There was a reason that you chose your profession. Okay. Maybe it was one moment, maybe it was many moments. And that made you know that this was what you were meant to do. This was what Arthur Brooks calls your calling. Brene Brown talks about wholehearted living. And she says, meaning is not something that we find one time. It's something that we return to over and over again. And for healthcare workers, the original source of meaning is almost always a story. Maybe an interaction with somebody that you admired, a mentor, a moment of genuine human connection where you saw what you could do for another person. I thought about, for me, it was always being the one that helped my dad when there was a cow that was calving. Again, he was a dairy farmer, and there would be cows that would calve, and sometimes they had problems, and he would ask me to help him. And I loved it so much that I was like put on watch. I was on calf watch, and I would always get up early. I would go find the cows that were close to calving and watch them. And if there was a problem, I would go get my dad. And then eventually I just stopped getting him because he was always, busy. And as I got older, I could handle things myself. And I would help the cow have the calf. And I loved the process of birth. I loved looking at the placenta. I just loved it. But I don't love animals, so I love humans. So that's why I chose to go into nursing and to labor and delivery. At one point in my life, I really did want to be an obstetrician because I just loved birth. And, my daughter is studying the reproductive system right now in her medical high school. And it is just so fascinating to me. I'm like, it is just a miracle. Anyway, so I want you to find your own story. I want you to write it down. I want you to tell it out loud to someone this week. I want you to journal it and find out, is this still true? More often than not, it is. Maybe it's just been buried under a mountain of, administrative weight, but hopefully it is not destroyed. And I want you to return to it regularly and deliberately and think about it. And this is one of the most powerful acts of self-care and regulation with work available to you, I think. Okay. Number 4, build micro joys into the structure of your day. And I talk about this a lot. And this comes from Deb Dana's work on glimmers. She names them as glimmers. And these are small, predictable moments of safety and delight throughout your day that help your nervous system feel and anchor it in ventral vagal regulation. Glimmers are not dramatic. They are often small. And that is the point. They mean something only to you and they feel regulating to you. I want you to think, what are the micro joys at your work? Is it a song you listen to on your way there? Do you have a favorite mug that you like using? Is it a 2-minute walk outside in between patients? Or is it a walk outside for just a few minutes during your lunchtime? Is it a check-in with a colleague that you genuinely like and have a friendship with? Is it a funny note that you leave somewhere for someone, or a joke? Or do you pause for a break for a Dr. Pepper every afternoon? Whatever. So do something that you love and that helps you feel regulated and means something to you. Okay, number 5, invest in one real work relationship. And I just cannot tell you how important this is. Research on workplace satisfaction and burnout resilience consistently show that the quality of our working relationships is one of the most powerful predictors in how we experience our work. It's not our salary, it's not our title, it's not our working conditions, it's not the building, it's not how nice it is, et cetera, et cetera. What it is actually our relationships with the people there. This is not shocking to me because this is co-regulation in action. When you spend your shift in proximity to a colleague or a friend or somebody who routinely can offer a regulated, warm, and genuine connectedness to you, your nervous system benefits. And when you invest in being that person for someone else, you benefit too. Because remember that the human brain is a social organ. It comes most fully online in the presence of safety with another human. So let's nourish that. Let's take that seriously. So build a relationship with somebody that you work with. Have real conversations every single shift. Have that one colleague that you check in with routinely that is a safe place for you to talk about things. Not just coordinate with, not just plan work things with, but a real live person that can see you. And it's not just a place where you gossip and complain about things, but I want you to create and find a real connection. Arthur Brooks says, if you're doing super mundane work, what you can do is take the opportunity to serve somebody. Take the opportunity to make someone's day. Take time out of your day to purposely and intentionally and deliberately make your world a better place in that moment. Those are my words of what he said. Okay, number 5 is identify and reduce your work anchors. Now, I don't like that I'm using anchors twice because they mean different things. This definition of anchors comes from the book Play It Away, which I just read. It's from Charlie Hone. I don't know if that's how you say his last name, but he wrote a book called Play It Away. And it's a really simple, easy read. I did like a lot of his ideas. I'm going to talk a lot about them in a future episode, but today I just want to introduce the concept that he talks about anchors. And he says there are stress anchors that keep our nervous system in a state of background alarm. This is the opposite of the regulating anchors that Deb Dana talks about for our nervous system. These are stress anchors. And these anchors are usually not dramatic. They're often like accumulated small things that drain us before the day even gets started. And these stress anchors are something that might be a relationship of tension that never gets addressed with a coworker, a difficult conversation that you never have, the elephant in the room that nobody addresses, an inbox that perpetually looks like an emergency, a specific type of documentation that takes 3 times longer than it should, something like that. The chairs are awful. A recurring meeting or a conversation that produces nothing, yet we still have it and nothing's getting accomplished, right? These are the things that he's talking about. And you cannot eliminate all of these, but I want you to name them and say, what is stressing me? And write them down. And then you can ask yourself, okay, can any of these be reduced? Can they be delegated? Can they be addressed? Is there something in our budget that we can do to get new chairs? Whatever. What can we do to eliminate or release these or move them? Because even a 20% reduction in one of these anchors can change your emotional temperature for the whole entire workday. So think about your stress anchors that are constantly like a low-grade fever causing you stress. Okay, number 7 is bring something of yourself into your work. Be a person. Be a person, okay? Healthcare workers who sustain joy and happiness in their career and bring personality are almost always the ones who haven't burned out. So when we bring our personhood into our professional role, it often makes it fun. You can be a specific way with your patients that is distinctly yours. Lots of people have a ritual or a phrase or a way of entering the room that is really recognizable to them. Some teachers do a certain thing every day. They end the class the same. They start the class the same. They say phrases over and over again, right? And even if your students roll your eyes or your patients roll your eyes or your kids, right? That is something that is bringing part of you into your work. So I want you to think, what is yours? What is something that you want to do that you haven't, that maybe you think is too unprofessional? And try it out. What can you do to bring the work that comes specifically from who you are, right? Not the role that you are hired to be, but a sense of humor or a particular kind of warmth. Maybe you have an artistic eye or a special way of explaining things, right? Or the story that you like to tell your patients to help them feel less afraid, more at home, more co-regulated. And I believe that these things are not unprofessional. I believe that these are what actually make your care irreplaceable, that make you a human and not a role. And I encourage you to protect those things, to practice them deliberately, because when we can bridge our personality and our profession, that keeps work from feeling like drudgery, like a job. It's just a better integration. Okay, I added one. So number 8, this is your bonus. Close the satisfaction loop. I talk a lot about the stress cycle. And I want to talk about the satisfaction cycle because, we learned from Arthur Brooks, and I talked about it, that satisfaction is a macronutrient. And often we deprive ourselves of it by never actually completing the satisfaction cycle. High achievers are notorious for this, right? You finish something significant and you're like, okay, great. And then you move on. You move on to the next. You're climbing the ladder. And if not physically, psychologically, you're just moving on. And so your completion never lands. The good job never lands. The, wow, that was really hard and I did it. And now I'm going to pause and take the time to congratulate myself so that satisfaction can register in your brain. So what I want you to do is to build a daily practice of marking what you did. This isn't necessarily a gratitude journal, although you can do that. But I want you to just for moments at a time, wow, that was a really hard patient. Good job me for taking care of them. Wow, that family member was really difficult. That parent to deal with was really difficult. That student had a complete meltdown and I showed up really well. Good job me. You can do this several times throughout your day, at the end of your shift, at the end of your workday, at the end of your week. And you can talk about what was hard, what went well, and what mattered, and how you did it. And I want you to seriously think about it and let it land, let it soak into your soul before you pick up the next thing and go on. That is closing the satisfaction loop and acknowledging how awesome you are. Okay. And that actually does help our brain record the satisfaction and helps it feel it. And again, satisfaction accumulated over days and weeks is what builds that sense of, I am doing work that is worth doing. I am doing something that's real. I am doing a good job at what I am choosing to do. Okay, wrapping up. Let's just rethink what vacations are for. And I want to be clear that I'm not telling you to stop taking vacations because they're wonderful, they're important, and you should use every day of your PTO that you've earned. But again, what I'm asking you to do is to stop asking vacations to do all the work for you, to regulate yourself, to fill in what's missing, to make it restoring, to, stop making it the only time that you're allowed to be a human being rather than a function. What vacations can do, and what I encourage you to do this summer when you take vacations, is maximize that time, provide a novel experience, be present, wake up parts of your brain that your daily routine puts asleep. Create extended, unhurried time with the people that you love the most. Strengthen those relationships, develop that. When you can have a physical and geographical distance from the role that you are in, it can help us create that perspective that ordinary life can sometimes make it nearly impossible. So take the time, be there, be present. I really do believe that those vacations can provide real and valuable gifts. But don't plan on your vacation to fix a broken work environment, to restore years of accumulated stress and burnout. Don't use vacation to substitute for the play and rest and glimmers and meaning and relationships and enjoyment that should be distributed across your whole life in micro moments. We want to use those and take those times all the time to make our life better so we don't have to escape it. For reals wrap up, your challenge this week is to choose one of the 8 ways. I wrote 7, but I actually gave you a bonus. 8 ways that you can make your workplace more enjoyable. And I want you to focus on that and protect it. Just one of them. I would choose the one that felt most true for you and where you are right now, and then you can add it. And then the next challenge is when you have a vacation coming up, I want you to identify one thing that you'll do differently. One thing that you're going to get real restoration from your rest. One intention on how you're going to return, being intentional in your planning. And again, I truly do believe that you deserve a life that doesn't require you to escape from it, right? Create a life that you love. Build a life that is built on one intentional choice at a time. I can't say this enough, but life happens in micro moments. So take those micro moments and make them work for you. Enjoy your vacations. Enjoy your work. Okay? Thank you for being here. Please share this episode with someone in healthcare or a teacher at the beginning of the summer, someone who you think is on that vacation treadmill and they can't seem to get off and they love to escape their life. And that's all they're doing is escaping their life time after time. I really do, again, believe that creating a deliberate, intentional life is the best way to live. So I will talk to you next time. Every week, you're learning something new here on this podcast, and that is a powerful first step. But guess what? Information alone doesn't create transformation. True change happens when you start to think differently and shift the nervous system patterns that drive your behavior. As a coach and an emotional resiliency expert, that is the work I do. I love to walk alongside you, whether it's one-on-one, in a small group that you choose, or with your workplace team. I can help you retrain your brain and nervous system so that stress no longer runs the show. You'll find ways to connect with me in the show notes. Let's do this work together.